Welcome to my podcast. I'm delighted to be sitting here at Highclere with Caroline Montague, and I thoroughly enjoy her books. They're historical fiction, I think I might describe them as.
Definitely.
And like me, she lives in a large house with all the challenges that possesses. But I think writing books for me takes me out of the everyday life and offers me something for myself. And I suspect that's something we might share in common. But let's find out. So, Caroline, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me. And yes, that question, it's absolutely true. When I go into one of my stories, I go into another imaginary world and I absolutely love it. And if there's a problem, I dive into my stories and then I'm free of it all for an hour or two. and then I can come back to it.
So do you have a specific room that you write in? As a writer, how do you settle down and what's your work program?
Yeah, I have an office and it is my haven and I take my dogs in there and I see your dog is with you constantly, which I really like. And I go and shut the door and then I say to everyone, don't come in, it's my time. I would like to say I work for 3 hours every morning, but I'm much more because there's so many other things to do. I try to work 3 hours a day, but it's when I can.
Well, I certainly don't achieve 3 hours a day actually at all. There are so many other things.
Of course. Well, you've got more,
well,
I'm
no,
sure,
really.
for me to do. But yeah, no, if I can get 3 hours done, some days, obviously, I don't do anything at all.
How many books have you written?
I started quite late because I had lots of careers. I read law, hated law, got a place to read English at Bristol. And my mummy, who was a barrister, and my elder brother, who was a barrister, both persuaded me to actually not read English at Bristol and read the law, which was a complete disaster. So I actually gave that up after 2 years and I got married at 19 and I became an interior designer. There was a little bit of modelling before that. Became an interior designer, which I did for years. Then my marriage fell apart and I met someone else and I moved to Burnt Norton. I'd written children's stories from 4 years old, actually. And it was the sort of catalyst because I lived at a place where one of the most well-known, greatest poems in the English language was written, first the four quartets. And somehow you can't have that huge inspiration without actually following through yourself. So I thought, right, I'm not if he can do it, I can do it because no way. But at the same time, some of his inspiration definitely rubbed off.
So Burnt Norton is the first of a poem called The Four Quartets written by T.S. Eliot.
Yeah.
And something which I think many of us who studied English literature, which I did as well, studied and loved. Funny enough, it's such a sophisticated and challenging poem. I think you read it when you're 18 or 19. And I found it unbelievably hard. And when I come back to it now, I enjoy it more each time that I reread it.
Absolutely.
And I think he went to stay with someone called Mary Hale, from what I remember. Was
Emily
that right?
Hale.
Emily Hale.
Yes, absolutely. Funnily enough, when I first read it, obviously I read it when I went to live there. I hadn't read it before. I tell you, I hadn't read it before. And I found it very obscure. And then I thought, I'm going to learn it. And I learned the whole of the first part.
Wow.
And then I started to understand it. And you see the children hidden in the shrubbery. And all his imagery somehow came to life. And I was absolutely captivated. But no, he came in 1934 because he'd been staying with Emily Hale and her family in Chipping Campden. And she had obviously told him there was this wonderful derelict house, very derelict, near Camden, and did they want to walk to it? So they trespassed, basically. They came through the woods, which was public right of way, and then they decided, OK, let's go down this way. And it was private, but they went on. And then they came, we're absolutely convinced this is what happened, that we have a wall with a little white gate, which is so enticing. And inside are these dry stone pools, dry the concrete, brown-edged, which is in the poem, of course. And he saw them. And he obviously said, let's go in. There's no one here. And so he came inside and wrote first the four quartets, Burnt Norton. So, yeah, it's extraordinary. And it is the pool garden, which we call it. It is extraordinary. And so it's certainly inspired me.
When did you and your husband come to live there then? Did you buy that or was that inherited?
No, my husband's family bought it from the bankrupt estate of Sir William Kite, who in turn had bought it from the Say and Seal Camp family. But William Kite was actually the subject of my first novel. And he had lived there with his family and his wife and children very happily, until he started having an affair with his wife's lady's maid, which sound a bit cliched, but this is what happened. So this is what I wrote about. And he then tried to murder the butler, and the wife, Lady Kite, left him and she went back to the other house. He lived at Burnt Norton with the lady's maid, Molly Johnson. And he then decided to build this massive house on the lawn, which is what he did. He bankrupted himself, his entire family. He embezzled their money and burnt the house and himself inside to the ground one night.
Good God.
In 1734. And my husband's family bought it off the bankrupt estate in 1741, I think it was. And they've lived there ever since.
Was that why it was called Burnt Norton?
Over Norton became burnt, purely and simply because it had burnt.
Goodness me. So the new house that he had built, it made him bankrupt, was the one that burnt to the ground.
That's the one. So we are in the original house.
You're in the original house.
He built a massive Georgian house on the lawn, and it was utterly beautiful. But within 2 years, he'd burned himself to death in it. So there's a lot of history there. And funnily enough, T.S. Eliot's poem, Hidden in the Shrubbery, and there's so much echoes of the past in that poem.
Yeah.
And I reckon he must have known William Kite's story when he went there, because there was no children when he went there. It was empty. So I think echoes of William Kite and his family and everything run through that poem for me.
But all T.S. Eliot's poems echo the past, don't they?
Yes, they certainly do.
They are extraordinary poems. Luckily at school I had the most amazing teacher who adored T.S. Eliot and William Prufrock and some of those poems as well. So I had such an amazing English background at school.
Isn't that incredible?
Which has then been so fortunate in later years. Yeah. And I've gone back there again. It is an extraordinary poem, and I think how amazing to be living there. But my God, there must be some ghosts, aren't there?
Oh, completely. In the 40s, Tudor Hall moved the school to Burnt Norton, to our house. And then after that, it was rented out. And then it was rented to a school for disadvantaged boys. And every so often, they come and they say, we had such a wonderful time here. Can I please go around the garden? And I take them around the garden. And of course, I want to get something in return. I want to get something back. What were your years like here? So many of them said the happiest in their life. But also, I say, okay, let's get to the real thing. What about ghosts? And they do tell me about ghosts. And it's brilliant because I have had one experience of a ghost at Burnt Norton. And it's exactly what they said, which sort of affirmed it. One particular man pointed to a window on the top floor and said, that is where we all drew lots not to be in that room. So I said, why is that? And I've never, ever told my daughter this, let me tell you, because I hope she doesn't listen to this. Because she doesn't like ghosts or would be frightened. Because that's where the White Lady walks, he said. So I took it with a pinch of salt. And about 6 months later, I had a girlfriend stay because my husband Conroy was in London. And I needed babysitting. And I always called her Practical Patty because she was really practical, no-nonsense girl. And at about 12 o'clock, she came rushing into my room. She was in the room opposite, which was the one below.
He pointed to.
Yeah, one below the one he pointed to. She said, Caroline, there's someone walking across the room above. And I said, no, Gina, come on. This is fine. I'm sure you're wrong. Anyway, I went into her room and there it was, thump across the floor. Definite the sound of footfall. And I rang Conroy and I said, could there be someone in the house? And he said, well, you better go and check. Well, of course.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. But I did. No one in the house. All the doors were locked. I think the dogs were downstairs at the time, no barking. Anyway, I said, oh, okay, pipes, no pipes. The following day, I took the dogs out. They slept in my bed, I think. Gina, I think, actually slept on the other side of the bed. It was quite funny. And nothing the following day, absolutely nothing. It had been a footfall. And that is the room where the White Lady walks. And, of course, this was directly below it. So she was walking. One year, some wonderful old ladies came back from Tudor Hall who'd been at Tudor Hall during the war. And they absolutely swore by the fact that there was a ghost. The White Lady was up there. So, I think she is.
When was the house, the one you're occupying now, actually built? How old is it?
It was built in the 17th century, but the cellars go back to the 1300s.
Right.
And then, as with every house, I'm sure here, and they're built over the centuries.
Do you know who the White Lady is?
No. My husband has lots of ideas about she was an old retainer or something, you know, but I don't know. I've had lots of pranks with the kids over the White Lady, let me tell you.
The team here have played the odd prank on me where I write there's a ghost outside sometimes, but he then did come back and I blamed them completely for that.
For calling him back, yes.
I said to them, if he's annoyed because you're pretending to be a ghost and scare me, he might well come back because he's really annoyed with you.
I'm sure. I agree.
And then that night, he was comes about 5:30, he walks down and then he stopped outside the room, which he doesn't normally do, and my dogs were barking, going bonkers.
That is funny, isn't it? It's quite... I don't know. I think my White Lady isn't going to do any harm. But it's still a bit scary when you hear her thumping across your ceiling.
Yes, you don't really want to go up there.
No, you don't.
So it's funny, isn't it? We're all the same. I actually had the house blessed to try to remove one particular ghost, which is always a good thing to do.
Well, funnily enough, we did the same, but not for that reason. We did have the house blessed because someone needed to leave and they didn't want to leave. And it was very interesting. And as we did it, a photograph frame of that person fell over.
How interesting.
So things do happen.
Well, we don't know everything. And your books explore, I suppose, both large houses and things that happen, don't they? And that when you start to write a book like Pieces of Us, which I've just read, and thank you very much, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Do you know where you're going at the start? How do you write, Caroline? Do you have the arc of the story? Do you know what's going to happen to the couple? And that couple obviously had a very challenging event in their life they were trying to resolve.
I do usually. Well, actually, my agent is very fierce with me because I would probably just let the story go and follow it. But she always makes me write a very detailed synopsis. I usually do know where the story's going, but of course it always changes. I mean, in the Pieces of Us, I was going to have someone murdered, and then I thought, no, it's not that kind of book, you know. So, yeah, I did have a pretty good idea, but of course it evolves because it was set in the Potteries. And once I became involved in the Potteries, it takes you on all these different directions, and it's just incredible. So I sort of knew, and I usually know sort of, but it evolves as yours do, obviously.
Yes, although mine tend to be...
You're more non-fiction.
I've been writing about non-fiction, although I'm writing one more non-fiction. I want to write a fictional book too.
Do you?
So I'm just sort of feeling my way through for the different characters in my head. Yeah. But I've got two specific ideas, but they're the different ones. And I want to write them both, and I can't say what order to start in. Well, and whatever you start, you want to do the other one. So it's always hopeless.
Well, funny enough, I'm writing two books at once, actually.
Oh, what?
I started to write one, which I was absolutely loving, and then my agent said, I want you to write the other one first, because the other one's got more of a hook.
Right.
So that's...
And how long does each book take you to write?
Well, it depends. Sometimes they try to make me do it in a year from start to finish with all your edits, which I find...
A challenge.
I can do it in 9 months, but then I'm really pushed. Some publishers make you churn out literally... Some people I know are doing 2 a year, and I couldn't do that. I mean, I've got a life. I think you'd be writing all day long if you did that. Every 18 months.
How many books have you written?
I've got, I think, about 7.
Wow.
But then I think it's 8 if you count The Unfortunate Maria Stella, which is my current one, which is the title will not stay the same.
I like the idea with your latest book, Caroline, that your title changed, because my titles changed the whole time. They're the biggest argument, as are the covers of the book.
And the covers.
Nightmare.
Oh, my God. The last one, The Pieces of Us, actually is a beautiful title, I think, but wasn't mine at all. And my editor said, how do you think about The Pieces of Us? And I said, oh, my God. Because everyone, with The Paris Secret, that was not my title. I struggled with that so much, but the publishers wanted it. So...
Well, the word secret in a title is very...
Yeah, but I don't like it, do you? So I was very happy with The Pieces of Us, and I was very happy with the cover. It's the first one where I didn't have a lady looking into the distance with a big house in the background. So I didn't want that. And this is a beautiful cover, I think. I don't know if you liked it, but it's...
Yes, no, I did very much. It's very
I thought
different.
it's the first one that had a really pretty cover. But yeah, The Unfortunate Maria Stella will actually definitely change the title. Actually, not only will the publishers change it, but I would change it because it's now about the main characters are two people rather than one. Because I realised that it didn't remotely match its USP. And actually, my daughter-in-law pointed this out. She said, Caroline, what was your USP? And I said, well, it was an extraordinary story. The jailer's son was swapped with the Duke of Orleans, and he ultimately became the King of France. And she said, well, what story did you write? And I said, well, I wrote about the girl. So I am completely rewriting that book. I thought I'd finished. It was about to go out, and I've stopped it going out. You know, The Man in the Iron Mask, it's about a swap. This has got an amazing hook, but it's only got an amazing hook if I write about both the characters.
Yes.
And so I'd written the girl's story, which was amazing because it's true, and it's all actually linked to a painting at home. But it was only half the story. So now I'm literally, as I say, I'm back at my desk rewriting that and, well, just adding to it, not really rewriting. Do you ever do when you have one chapter of one person, one chapter of another person?
I do. I write rather like a jigsaw puzzle, and I don't always know the arc of what I'm writing.
Which is exactly...
So I sometimes have the outside of it, and then I find I work on different elements of it, flowers or a house. So that's how I work through it. And sometimes with The Earl and the Pharaoh, which is a little bit of historical fiction, but very based on facts and diaries, I started with a chapter which I knew I wanted to write when the fifth Earl's mother died. And I just thought that was such a key time in his life. That's where I wanted to begin with everybody, draw them in. So that was very clear. And then after that, it was a huge patchwork, which I only discovered. I ended up, obviously, with Tutankhamun, but in between was my patchwork jigsaw puzzle of doing a bit of sky, bit of this, bit of that. Because actually they fed into each other.
Of course.
So that's
I like
quite
that,
interesting.
You know. I've had 3 dual stories where you have one past, one present, one past.
Yes.
And I think it's quite interesting. It keeps people on their toes, certainly. In Pieces of Us, of course, you have the past heals the tragedy of the present because obviously Marina loses a child and she's Italian and she's a human rights lawyer and she comes to England and is lost in this great big house her husband has, Thorncliffe Hall. She learns this story. She gets the grain of a story at the house. Actually, when she buys a coffee pot in London and she realises that it's actually made in the family pottery and it brings up a whole story. But by finding this story, her tragedy in the present is healed by the past. And I love that, don't you? When the past can heal the present.
Well, it's probably very Burnt Norton, isn't it? Where the past, the present, the future
exactly.
coming together.
Maybe it's good old T.S. Eliot. He's
coming back. I told you they were all once.
Yes.
And live now, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is a great poem because it is about living now, standing and stopping and staring.
It is as well.
And that poem's about the outside of the shrubbery. And I think going outside is such an important part of life and how characters evolve and unfold.
Exactly. Well, so many of my characters evolve in the woods. And I'm sure yours do too, when you're walking or riding or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that's when I have time to think.
So you also love spaniels, I've gathered, Caroline.
I am potty about my Spaniels, yeah. They rule the roost. And they are the Insta queens, not me at all. You know, it's Suki and
So what
Poppy.
spaniels do you have? Suki and Poppy?
Without Suki and Poppy, I would have no followers.
It's funny, the world of social media, isn't it?
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
So do you have any other dogs, or it's just the 2 spaniels?
No, now it's just the 2 spaniels. I had 3 spaniels. Before, I always used to have golden retrievers. But my wonderful husband said they were far too hairy. And they were spreading gold hair everywhere.
They are quite hairy.
They are quite hairy, but actually I have got one very hairy spaniel. And so she's just as spready, I think.
I know, they are. I've got 3 spaniels, and they are just the joy of my life, actually. So
they're so bright.
They are very bright.
So bright, and I just love them. Now my kids have left home. They are very huggable, and the kids didn't want me to hug them anyway recently.
No, I know.
So your spaniels are very, Yeah.
Very important, actually, for emotional well-being.
Oh, hugely, hugely. You know, that terrible thing when your kids suddenly decide to go off to London and get married, get boyfriends, whatever. And then you've got a spanny.
They're actually probably easier, funnily enough.
They probably are.
Less
Yeah,
washing.
they don't answer back either.
And do you also have horses as well in the country?
Well, I have 2 left in the field. I used to have dressage horses, and I rode to quite a high standard. I mean, I never won. I was always bottom because I was competing at Prix St George, where you've got all the sort of big boys, and advanced medium, where you've got the big boys competing against you, Carl Hester, and lots of very, very good riders. And of course, I was always bottom, which actually was slightly soul-destroying, but I did love it. And then my little beautiful dressage horse was killed on the cattle grid. Yeah, absolutely terrible. And it broke my heart, and I haven't got on a horse since.
She tried to go across it?
I was in Italy, and I will never actually know exactly what happened because no one did. He got out of the field and he got onto the cattle grid. I rode past the cattle grid every day. So I don't know whether he was terrified by a gunshot or something happened. And I haven't written since, and that must be 9 years ago. So, you know, that was the sadness. But, I mean, I love watching other people. And funnily enough, I don't want to fall off anymore.
No.
You know, they're big horses. My dressage horses were all 16'2", 17
Well, I've
hands.
just got a new horse who's 16'2".
Really lovely. Is he a good boy?
Well, I don't know yet. He's only 3.
Is he only
I'll find
3?
out.
Well, just be careful.
Well, no, I will. But he's a Spanish Andalusian.
Oh, my God. I love them.
He's got a nice head, and I think he's mentally stable.
That's what you
and
want.
I think that's what I want. And he has been broken in Seville, in Spain.
Oh, amazing.
I'm just walking him by hand, which I'll do tomorrow morning.
Oh, how divine.
And I sat on him and bought a saddle yesterday. So I'm very happy with my saddle. So I'm just trying to find someone to go around the estate with, because it's a beautiful way to see this amazing estate and parkland.
Of course.
So explore. So I'm trying not again to fall off. I don't want to do that.
No, you don't.
But it is time out. I've also got one of those. I've just bought one of those air jackets.
Oh, have you?
which
Good
blow
idea.
up.
Good idea.
So it doesn't sort everything, but
No,
you know,
but it does.
It does. It is a sensible way to go.
I think it absolutely
And
is.
I'm just going to go very, very carefully.
Very carefully. Yeah. And, well, you'll know already if he's got a sensible brain, I'm sure.
I've been promised he has, because it was a friend of mine who found him.
Yeah.
I sat on him and felt he was a bigger version of my Arab, but actually probably a
Gorgeous.
little bit more stable than them.
They're probably more stable. And Arabs are quite flighty, aren't they?
They are. We
They're
used to have quite
gorgeous.
exciting rides,
Yeah.
but I think he felt quite good, actually. So I
And
feel
what colour?
grey, dapple grey.
Oh, fine. Funny enough, the only time I've been really tempted to have a house in Italy, hence my Italian affair, which I set in my house in
Yeah.
Italy. And opposite is a wonderful sort of hotel called Rescue.
I know Rescue. That's where those are my friends who found me on my horse.
No.
Yeah, those are my oldest friends, Ponti and Angie Bolzi. So
Don't
Ponti
say.
Bolza very kindly has found me my Spanish horse.
Well, let me tell you, it was his horse. He asked me if I wanted to ride it. Ponti actually had this beautiful white stallion in the stable, and I went to look at it, and I just fell in love with it.
He's lovely, so that's where I go and stay.
That
and
is
they
crazy.
come over with
Well,
me.
my house is opposite.
How hysterical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, well, that's where I go in Italy. So next time I'm over there.
Yes,
and they're coming to stay with me in June,
That is
actually.
absurd.
So, yes. So he is the man. I wanted to find an Andalusian who I could grow old with and wander around with without having too many accidents. And he buys his horses from his great friend Ignacio in Spain.
Yeah.
And I thought I would have one, because if I don't do it now, I probably won't. And I thought I would like
That's
to have
extraordinary.
another horse. And they found me one, which they've both promised has got a very kind
heart.
heart and kind heart.
Do you know, that's so extraordinary, because this is the one time I was tempted since Skippy died with his beautiful stallion. Because
They
it
are
looks so
lovely.
calm, and it's never, I mean, he's in his 80s, for heaven's sake.
He is.
And so therefore I thought, he said, it's so kind, Caroline, it's so calm. And I thought, well, I really want to. And then I thought, maybe not, you know.
They are kind, they are calm, and I have ridden out with him. So this one is slightly bigger than I thought, but I think the attitude matters more than anything else.
Of course it does.
So that's where I'm going. I have to show you a picture. He's called Brujo,
Oh,
which means
divine.
kind of a magician in
How
Spanish.
wonderful. Well, you need to read Shadows Over the Spanish Sun, because that, I have done it all around my dressage knowledge. And it's set in the Spanish Civil War, but this Leonardo, is my hero, and he trained horses in the Spanish way, and it was in Seville.
Well, it's trying to get the horses to work with you, which I think is magical. And Ponti and his Antonella have written a book about Speak Equus, which is about how to get a horse to go with you. And that's what I'm interested in doing. So we both go through life and the journey together and face the challenges together. And I think that's a lovely journey. I think books, reading, horses, animals, dogs, they're all part of the best way of sharing lives.
Oh, I agree.
And every month, I love my book club here and chatting to people who write books, because that's where our imagination leads us and takes us into the worlds that you create. It takes us out of our daily life and you can live vicariously. And it's immensely relaxing because you let your brain go. So
I agree. I mean, animals are everything. I couldn't live without them.
Well, animals, reading and writing and books.
Yes,
so I think
that's it.
It's a library, a garden,
could we take them all to the desert island, do you think?
Definitely. But Caroline, every summer we have a summer dance or something, a sort of special occasion to celebrate still being here, I think, is the main thing for all of us. And if you could ask anyone you wanted, from past or present, from Prince Albert to T.S. Eliot, to come with you to the summer dance, apart from your husband, who I'm sure would be your first. Who do you think you might ask to come with you?
Shall I tell you, I know exactly. If anyone had listened to Desert Island Discs not so long ago, about 18 months ago, they would have heard Carl Hester, who is one of my very best. I've been to a dance with him as his partner because he's gay. And he makes me laugh. And he's one of my oldest friends, and I absolutely adore him. And he makes me laugh. So, yes, I would definitely. He's also very handsome. And he's my gay best friend, and I love him to bits. So, yes, he'd be my choice.
Excellent. Well, I would look forward to seeing you with Carl Hester and watching you both dance.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for joining me today.
Thank
Wonderful.
You.